Welcome to the Decent People podcast, a production of Decential Media, where we're committed to telling the stories of the founders, builders, and visionaries who are creating a new decentralized economy and internet experience. You guys know it as Web3 or blockchain, and we're going to bring you the smartest and most interesting people in the space for intimate conversations that reveal their background, how they got into crypto in the first place, and what they're doing today to make a decentralized future a reality. Thanks so much for joining us. Make sure to check out our site at decential.io. Now, to the show.
Welcome back to another episode of the Decent People podcast. I'm your host, Steve Ladden. This week, I'm here with Abhishek Bhaskar, also known as Abverse in the crypto world, metaverse world. He is one of India's leading beatboxers and the creator of the Metavoice project. Abhishek, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Stephen. It's a pleasure being here, and always, I'm a guy who gets paid to talk. So the more people allow me to talk, the more I enjoy talking about myself. But yeah, thank you for having me and giving me this opportunity and time. More importantly,
absolutely,
pleasure to be here.
Sure, and if getting paid to talk is your thing, then I think we're in the right place. And to that end, obviously one of your biggest talents is beatboxing. Was that, just out of curiosity, was that something that you grew up wanting to cultivate? Did you fall into it? How did that sort of become a fixture in your repertoire of
Sure.
talent?
So I used to play this sport. It's supposedly one of India's greatest sport called cricket, which is similar to baseball, right? So I used to be a cricketer before, and a friend of mine called Karthik, he was a bowler as well, and he started beatboxing, but I didn't know it was called beatboxing back then. So I told him, "What's wrong with your mouth?" And he said it's called beatboxing, and that's when I got addicted to it, and I had to learn beatboxing. So he was gracious enough to teach me beatboxing in the initial days back in school in my 10th grade. And that's when I started taking it up professionally because I realized that this hobby of mine, which was mostly fun and games, could become a full-fledged profession in India. Because again, in India, it's not mainstream. Beatboxing is more of an American origin-based piece. But making that into a full-fledged profession here was nowhere an easy task. But yeah, that happened 12 years ago when I was 15, 16 years old. And ever since then, there was no looking back. It was 100% all into beatboxing.
And what gave you the confidence to go all in and pursue it with all of your being?
So when it was still a hobby, there was this religious festival that was happening in where I stay in Bangalore, India. So I thought, why not go try out beatboxing in a religious festival, which has no connections at all. And within 3 minutes of me being given a slot, like they gave me a 5-minute slot, and they thought beatboxing was supposed to be boxing. And again, this was 12 years ago. They had no idea. People still don't know what beatboxing is. So within 2-3 minutes, people started jumping around in this 3,000 4,000 people, and that was my first ever show. And they gave me a consolation prize after my performance of I think it was around 200 rupees, which in US dollars is around $3. They gave that to me in an envelope, and that's when I realized for a 10th grade guy, it's actually here it's a substantial amount, right? So it's a good, you can go out for a good dinner for that price back then. So I went and gave it to my mom. I just went and gave that envelope to my mom, and that's when I realized you could actually make money from this so-called hobby. So and that confidence came in through the idea that I could be financially independent from beatboxing. So that was my biggest motivator. Like, how do I sustain? That is most important, both financially and also creatively as an artist, right? Because this is something that I have to love doing. I'm not someone who likes doing something if I don't like it, and I have to have that tendency to do it because I love it, not just because I have to survive financially. So beatboxing is something that worked out really well financially as well as creatively. I get to make people happy. That's my job. So why not make a living out of it? That's my thesis.
Yeah, which I think is something that, a lot of people could aspire to. And I mean, myself included, we've all, I think at certain points, I should say all, but a lot of people, myself included, have taken jobs here and there where you're not fully invested. And to your point, it's like, it's hard to kind of stomach those days when you know that your passion lies elsewhere. So it's cool to hear that you noticed you had a talent, realized it's something you could sustain yourself on, and then pushed yourself to, define yourself in that space.
Absolutely.
To that end, so things progress. You're sustaining yourself. What then leads to uh, sort of your foray into NFTs and the Metavoice project and stuff of that nature?
Sure. So I started beatboxing very early on, right? So I was 15, barely 15 when I started off. And then once you finish your school, you have to, pursue your degrees and your, you have to go for your further education. So at that time, I decided to take up architecture, which is essentially designing, or engineers who don't know mathematics. That's what architects are called. So I pursued my bachelor's in architecture and I finished it. And again, when I started taking up architecture, I was least interested in architecture. I just wanted to do it because I can focus my time on beatboxing. But slowly and steadily, I started falling in love with the process of design, and that sort of stuck with me. And I had to sort of merge these two things together. And that is when, back in 2016, during my architectural internship, I had this idea of why not fuse beatboxing and design together, not just architecture, but design in general. So I wanted to keep it very vague because, again, I myself didn't know what this could be at that particular point in time. Because it could be applied to buildings, it could be applied to an abstract piece of art, like, which is essentially what Metavoice is. So I wanted to keep it very vague. And so during that time, it sort of got lost in the process of procrastinating and just pushing things off. And during the pandemic, as you know, as a performing artist, your entertainment industry gets hit first because it's a such a public space where everything is public. It's out in the open, right? You're performing in public and things like that. So in entertainment industry got hit first. And again, as usual, artists were pretty jobless for the past 2 years. That's when I realized, why not finish this Metavoice project that I started off way back in 2016 and push it out as a research project. But that's when I came again. I was into crypto since 2016, by the way, but into digital ownership since 20 I think mid 2020. And that's when I realized, why not push this boring research project, which would have essentially been like a white paper, which not many people read, except for the nerdy few like me. So I thought, okay, rather than it getting buried in a library, it would be better as an audiovisual experience. So that's when I started creating audiovisuals using my voice. And that was the visual birth of the Metavoice project. And then I came across NFTs. How do you actually store digital collectibles on blockchain? And that's when I realized that this is the perfect time to pivot Metavoice into a space where people can own a part of your soul. Because essentially, if you think about the Metavoice project, right, even right now, what we are speaking, it's the third evolution of the human voice. First, we learned how to speak. That was the first evolution of the human voice. Second one was we learned how to sing, we humans. And third one, I believe, is vocal percussion, which is beatboxing, which is so, the ability to do that is the third evolution. So similar to Web 3.0, we have Voice 3.0, and I want to show that as a milestone in this entire journey of NFTs and whatever is about to happen next.
That's cool. So, and I like how you outline sort of the human discoveries in terms of the senses and everything like that. So it sounds like then, to make sure I understand, that you had the Metavoice project going before NFTs really became what they are now.
Right. It was a research project. Essentially, it would have become a very nerdy scientific research paper, which got pivoted into an audiovisual experience. Because for people to grasp the concept of Metavoice, it would have been very hard to, if I had released it as a research paper. So what is the first step? It is, if mass adoption has to happen, the mass has to understand what is happening. So that's when I sort of decided that it's better served to people as a audiovisual experience. Then later the research part, the technical details can come into the picture. So that will happen maybe in another 1-2 years time, when the audience understands what Metavoice is, what I'm trying to do, and then they're ready for the technical details.
Got it. Got it. And so in terms of Metavoice merging with the world of NFTs, what does that look like, and how does one interact with your voice in the Metavoice project?
Sure. So in my case, it is my own voice that is going out as NFTs, because essentially I want to capture different genres of music and show that every genre has a different reaction. So my thesis, or the idea behind Metavoice, is if you pinch yourself, it hurts, right? So the pinch is the
Oh,
stimulus and the response is the pain, right?
yeah.
So that is essentially the idea, where the human voice is the stimulus and the response is the visual experience that is happening. So the stimulus and response applied in a 3D format is what the Metavoice project is. And also because I believe our voice is a signature in itself. If I ask you to say the exact same intro what you introduced me with, right? If I ask you to deliver the same exact way, you won't be able to do it, right? If you ask me to talk the same way I did 5 minutes ago, I won't be able to do it. So voice is a timestamp signature which can never be replicated again. And that is the beauty. In my Metavoice pieces, you can hear me breathing, right? And I want that raw voice to be captured in this over everything. I don't want it to be perfect, because perfection can be replicated, and once it goes digital, and once I morph it or affect it digitally, it can always be replicated. So even if my collectors, they ask me to sort of beatbox the same beat again, I won't be able to do it in the exact way. It's like asking me to make an exact 100% copy of my signature. It'll always be a little varied from every signature, right? So that's what Metavoice is.
Got you. Got you. So it's almost like an audio version of painting, in the sense that you
Right.
could paint the same painting twice, but your brushstrokes aren't going to be the same. They're not going to line up,
Perfect.
throughout. You
Yes,
could
exactly.
same color scheme and everything else could be the same, but it's going to be a different painting inherently because the inputs are different. So it's kind of like what you're saying, uh, is the audio inputs of your voice,
Yeah.
even if it's the same thing, is going to be
The
different.
human voice is the purest version of non-fungibility that you can ever try to figure out, right? Because even if I try to do it, I can't do it myself. That's how powerful the voice is. It's a signature, essentially.
Right. Right. So have you stopped, like when you have to sign your name, do you just use your voice and then they
I hope so. I hope so, because one day I'd like so where I see Metavoice project heading is people who are differently able, people who can't hear music, right? If they're deaf, or if they are unable to hear music, my hope is they can see the reaction, the visual reaction, and create music for themselves. So imagine listening to the Metavoice piece, but without the audio. So, and then trying to recreate music for yourself, right? So I think that is what I see the potential, where we are targeting a different sensory organ. So sound is primarily through your ears, right? But what if we could see the sound through our eyes and create sound for ourselves through our eyes? That's the intent. That's the long term ambition of Metavoice.
got it, got it. So it's essentially when you put your voice into a visual medium, we're just seeing sound waves, or I guess what are we seeing when we're seeing
So you're
sound
seeing
visualized?
different characters of sound being played out. So even if you see my Metavoice 1, 2, 3, and 4, there are different characteristics of sound that are being captured. So that's why I want people to see it again and again. Because one, if you see Metavoice 1, there are these huge blobs that are reacting in and out. But if you see it closely, it's not just that what is happening. If you see the individual blobs, they are scaling in and out as well. So they are becoming smaller and bigger depending on the beat. So there are different characteristics like frequency, amplitude, the bass, and so many different characteristics of sound, right? So that is what is triggering each and every part of this particular meta voice piece.
Got it, got it, got it. That's super cool. And how does that translate? I know you were the world's first ever beatboxer to perform in the metaverse. How did you have the visual component when that happened? How did that play out? And sort of what do you
Uh,
expect? Do you expect to do it again? What's the
Yeah, in fact, I was just discussing with another client for having their performance in the next 1 to 2 days. So this is during the NFT NYC event. So yeah, my first performance in the metaverse was in Decentraland, and this was last year. One of my collectors, Technico, so he's one of my biggest collectors till date, and he organized this event in Decentraland called Breaking the Metaverse. So a bunch of hip hop artists came together all across the world and they sort of perform. So it's very hard to do it live because beatboxing is a live performance, right? So it's very hard to get the visuals live, right? Because that is a real time interaction that is happening. So what happened in that was it was more of a live performance and also bits of pre-recorded performances as well. Because again, there's a huge lag that happens. If I beatbox now, you'll probably listen to it 2 seconds later, so which will be very, very offbeat. So the best way to combat that right now with the tech that we have is to sort of pre-record bits and pieces of it and then play that in the metaverse.
Interesting. So it's you're playing it in the metaverse on a delay, essentially.
Yes, trying to combat the delay.
Got it. And what do you think is there a future here for live beatboxing performances in the metaverse? Does technology need to evolve in order to accommodate, say, like a non-delayed performance? What do you see as sort of the lane here in the metaverse moving forward?
So definitely live performance is a reality right now because we can stream our Twitch streams live into Decentraland. So that is definitely a possibility. But again, the common problem with that is everyone's internet speeds are different. So different people will get it at different points of time. So we tried that once, and it delays differently for different people, and for some people, I'm just stuck this way. So it's very sort of weird to get that out across. So the best experience that we can provide right now is to have pre-recorded bits with real-time interaction. So I'm there, and from maybe even Decentraland has their own built-in audio discussion place. So that is more real-time, and if that is the only possibility, then real-time beatboxing is possible. But if it's streaming your video live as well, which consumes more data, then definitely that takes a hit on the overall experience of performing and you experiencing beatboxing in the metaverse or any other visual art form.
In terms of then, your own minting of NFTs and uh, the future of the visual beatboxing, what do you have planned coming up? What can we expect to see? What's in terms of those launches, what's on the horizon?
Sure. So I launched till date. There are 6 Metavoice pieces that exist, are currently in circulation, so to speak. So I launched my first one in April 3rd. I want to say April 3rd, 2021. That is last year. And right now there are 6, but again, I don't want to overpopulate the market with a lot of Metavoice pieces, and these are special. Like, I am a huge Harry Potter fan, so I believe these are like Horcruxes that we leave with collectors, so they own a part of our soul this way. So every edition is like part of a soul. But what is happening next is I'm working on a piece where I'm recording my breathing patterns, because what India went through and the entire nation and the entire world went through during the pandemic, right? There was one scenario in India, especially, where people were literally fighting for oxygen. So I want to record my different breathing patterns. So one is a normal breathing, and the other one is where it's completely congested. So I want to record that and showcase the beauty in that pain. That's what I want to relay. So when people are highly suffocated and they're just searching for oxygen, how would that sound? But how do you make that painful sound and portray that in a beautiful way? That's one of the projects. And there's also a tree that I'm trying to get to react real time with beatboxing. So that is the harder part. But again, these are like, I want every piece to be different because I want people to collect it and be happy with it, and different people relate to different things. One of the examples being for the Valentine's Day on Feb 14th, I dropped the Metavoice 6 heartbeat. So I basically beatboxed a heartbeat like with that, and this heart is reacting to it. So people collected that and they gifted it to their partners and better halves, and they also got this cute augmented reality sculpture as an airdrop as well. So that way the art becomes a utility itself, and it's a cause for celebration. So yeah, different pieces like that. And there's one major project that I'm working on, but I'm still yet to figure that out, because I want to do it right and I want to take my time. I'm known for taking a lot of time, but yeah, let's see where it goes.
So it sounds like that's awesome. So it sounds like then there's a lot of thought and care and inspiration behind, like intentionality, I should say, behind each and every piece. And as you said, so is there are the collective of all of your pieces, would there be a bigger sort of umbrella under which they all fall, or is each piece its own thing for a specific purpose that's different from all the others?
Uh, so I'd like to say it's part of a larger plan, because when I initially planned for it, so I go by the name Abverse, right? So it's essentially Abhishek Bhaskar's Metaverse. That's the whole full form of Abverse. But right now I don't want to reveal it, because again that would spoil the entire fun bit of it. So once the trick is explained, people lose interest in that. So right now I want people to think it's all these pieces are separate, because ultimately I'm doing it with that intent in mind, right? Like every single beatboxing has a different genre of music, whether it's dubstep, whether it's old school hip hop, or whether it's jazz, or like the heartbeat sounds. So I want it to be that way, but somewhere down the line, in a few years, people can expect it to sort of congregate into a performance of all these beats, because when a beatboxer performs, it's a cumulative of all different beats coming together. So that's what I envision myself. Then that will be like the master performance time. So
Gotcha.
that's, yeah, that is
Gotcha.
the
Gotcha.
as much as I can say right now.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. So a couple things on that. It's like in one way, there's a kind of a beautiful metaphor too, where as individuals, creators, people, the role that people play in life, they may think they're on their own individual path, and then yet at some point there might be an awakening or a realization that, hey, you're actually part of this bigger collective. So in many
Absolutely.
ways your artwork in this sense is epitomizing that. The other thing
Absolutely.
is where I guess is just a curiosity is where does your inspiration for determining, or what's your process for determining what type of beat is going to fit the vision for, with a heartbeat, for example? Like how do you determine which genre of music best fits a certain
Right.
visual?
Yeah, and so with respect to that, I know I think it's important to understand my approach towards things, right? So I'm a beatboxing. So there are two types of beatboxers. Firstly, so one is there are performers, and then there are competitors. So people who compete and they do all the technical stuff. I don't do that. I do things which people can relate, and I'm more of a performer. I like to make people happy. For example, if I do a very complex beat like, so instead of doing that, if I did, which is the Black Eyed Peas song, which is My Humps, right? So that is something that people can relate to, and they relate to it better, and they enjoy it better. Or if I did something very complex, again it goes back to the concept of a research paper. No one would read a research paper, but many people would watch a Metavoice piece, like an audiovisual piece. So that is my opinion, and with that is ultimately where I see this entire Metavoice journey heading into this entire space. But yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Uh, awesome. Well, in terms of your role and beatboxing and metaverse, everything like that, is there an intersection? I know you were the first Indian beatboxer to be featured for a concept for Pepsi. Is there more tie-ins between companies and brands and stuff like that moving forward, both in the metaverse and your art specifically?
Yeah, I would love to do that. In fact, we are discussing some brand integration into this at some point. But I don't want it to be at a level where I lose any. So this is something that I'm very particular of. I don't want to lose any creative control in the process. because the entire reason why I did NFTs or got into digital collectibles and everything is because I wanted that creative satisfaction of letting my idea out after almost say 5 years, right? Which is essentially Metavoice coming out from my head into a visual thing which everyone can experience. So that I have to stay true to that, and which is why I need complete creative control. With that, whatever I can think of which could help brands. Again, I'm also in the Web3 space for a while now. I'm also working closely with companies on how to grow and strategize their their entire companies, the Web3 companies. So I always look for more of creative outlets rather than some other ideas coming in and spoiling the entire thing. So when I'm there, give me complete control. I'll deliver you 100% creative product or a service, whatever that may be. I'm very particular that way. So, but yeah, as a creative person, that is, I spend most of my time being creative. That's why I took up architecture and beatboxing. So both of those things are creative processes. So
Sure.
yeah.
And do you also create the 3D worlds in which the your NFTs are existing in? Like, is that all through you, or do you use a different company? How does all that come to be?
I have two companies, right? So one is B for Beatbox, which is the beatboxing arm and the entertainment arm of my career, and the other one is Dirt Lab, so DERT Lab, so Design, Education, Research, and Technology. So we have augmented reality products. We have again, these are world building products, which is essentially now is Metaverse projects. So with Abverse, that is what I'm trying to do, right? In the long game, it'll be my own metaverse. I strongly believe that there will be something that will kick off where each one of us could have our own metaverses. So I could jump into your metaverse, you could jump into mine. We can, so similar to Ready Player One, where each planet can be a separate metaverse by itself. So I believe that will happen, and I'm just preparing for that. So I'm slowly building out and visualizing the 3D part of my what my artwork could look like, and then eventually deploy that into my own metaverse, which would
Got it.
be Abverse.
So when you step into Adverse, we're stepping into your world, your art, beatboxing, and how all of that kind of culminates and comes together. And that's really cool. So you think that the vision is that everybody who participates would eventually have their own universe that, or metaverse that
Correct.
everybody could
If
step
you
into.
want to watch a beatboxing performance from Abhishek, come into Abhishek Bhaskar's metaverse. Or if you want to check out these artworks that are there, come into my metaverse. So things like that. Or if you, this is something out of a scene from Inception, right? If you want to, roam around through an entire city, if you want to rent your own city, come in. I'm renting my own Abverse, so to speak. So, wander around empty roads and whatever you want.
Right. Come to the Adverse store and you
Yeah,
know, yeah,
exactly.
check it out. That's neat. That's neat. Well, uh Abhishek, this is really, really cool, and excited to hear and see, where Adverse ends up growing, and what it grows into. To that end, is that the focus moving forward, just continuing to grow the Adverse, continuing to grow your own universe, or do you have any other specific? I know we talked about the specific NFTs that you're cultivating. Anything else that is being implemented for the long term game or short term game within the verse that we should know
So
about?
uh, NFTs and my beatboxing performances will be the building blocks for the eventual long term, which is Abverse. As simple as that. So these are the individual bricks that I'm laying. We're using NFTs, beatboxing performances. I'm emceeing at a whole bunch of events. I've been an MC for the past 10 years as well. So all these I consider as the bricks and brick and mortar, and eventually this will be used to build out my Abverse. And I still don't know what. Again, I'm keeping it very vague right now because I myself don't know what. As a creative person, you never know what's next. So I want to keep it very open, very vague, so that I can include as many things as possible into this particular thing. But right now, I'm focused on beatboxing and NFTs, with the long-term vision being it'll all get integrated into my metaverse.
Well, Abhishek, this has been a phenomenal conversation. Thanks again for taking the time. Abhishek Bhaskar, also known as Abverse, thank you for your time. This is another episode of the Decent People podcast by DeCent Media. I'm your host, Steve Ladden, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Stephen. It was a pleasure being here as always. And thank you for allowing me to talk about myself for this entire duration of this thing and talk about my projects. It's always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Sure thing.